CashFlow Diary Podcast, episode 470.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because here's the thing. You've heard me say it before, and I will say it one more time. What's that, Jay? I'm going to say where you start is not necessarily where you stay. It's another way of saying that this whole thing of building cash flow, going into business, doing real estate, whatever it is that's your gig, well, be prepared to grow, be prepared to change, be prepared to experience all kinds of things that may not be fun, but at the end of the day, you can still get work done and make stuff happen. And I have with me today a gentleman who has done exactly that. And we're going to talk about that journey because, see, what it comes down to is that the reasons why you start may not always stay the same, and you may change. And more importantly, at some point in your journey, you have a lot to share because you want to help other people do the same thing. In fact, many of you probably already know him from NV Real Estate Academy. You probably know that he's got the National Real Estate Network. And in fact, he's got a new book out right now called 7-Figure Decisions. Here's the thing. I think those are the type of decisions that we all want to make more of because at the end of the day, 7 figures is just the result, but it's who you become along the way. And I think we're going to learn a lot and enjoy what we have with us today. And we have none other than Nick Vertucci. Nick, how you doing?
Jay, what's up? How are you, buddy?
So far, so good. Enjoying life in the OC. And I hear you're out here with me.
That's right. I am. Born and raised.
It happens so rarely in this internet age to where the person I'm talking to, I could actually go like drive and see. It doesn't happen that often.
Where are you in the OC?
I'm in Mission Viejo.
Nice. Okay, good. I'm right here in Orange, so cool. We're close.
Yep, very, very, very. Now, this being your first time here on the podcast, I have to ask you the same question that I tend to ask everybody else the first time they're here. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, buddy.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. Because I think superheroes and entrepreneurs have a ton of things in common. Chief among them, as an entrepreneur, occasionally I can envision myself flying around town, saving my customers, using our products and services in various fashions. But also, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. For example, if you think about Spider-Man, there was a time he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing. Nothing else really important about it. But at the end of the day, something happened to him and he discovers that, oh my goodness, I have this special ability and I get to use it for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before the books, before the real estate, before all the businesses and the things that you've got going on, before what people know you for, whether they've seen you on stage, heard you before all of those things, what we really want to know is, who is Nick Vertucci?
Well, okay, I can do that. I think I know that story. So I'll tell you what. I mean, and it's funny. I think it resonates because there's so many people out there, and you hit the nail on the head. Most people see, our success as an entrepreneur speaks for itself, but you don't see the journey. And most folks out there that haven't gotten there yet, which we'll get there, but haven't gotten there yet, they don't understand that most of our past are really kind of the same thing, and maybe not even as great as someone else's past. Me, for example, I'm K through 12 educated, man. I knew early
you too.
on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I started, I went to college right out of high school because that's what everyone told me to do. And that's what society puts you in that box to do. And listen, you may agree with this too. There's nothing wrong with education. I don't look down on it, but I knew that it wasn't my journey. And not long after I signed up for college, I got rid of all my classes because I knew that I was going to go in a different direction. And one of the common denominators for me was I knew that one of the most precious commodities, I don't think I realized it, but I think instinctually I did, was my time. And I wanted to start creating things that would capture and protect the most valuable asset to me at that time, which was my time. Now, for me, what I did was, man, I was at 10 years old, I lost my father. And so I was raised by just my mother and my sister. I was one of those kids where my mom was working as a real estate agent. And I remember going home with a key around my neck with actually literally a string. Okay. So I kind of had that background. Again, K through 12 educated, nothing riveting about me. When my mother and sister moved from, when you're 18 years old and I was in Anaheim Hills, Orange area where I'm now, and they moved to Irvine. Well, as an adult, that's 10 minutes in a car, 15 minutes, not a big deal. But when you're 18, that's your whole world. So what I did, bud, I had a van and I decided to stay in that area. I lived in my van for a couple years. And at 22 years old, because I had been working, I'd been working at a place called Fill-In Jim's TV and Appliance, and from high school, I worked my way through up delivering TVs and big screens and washers and dryers and all that. Then I went into sales with that company, and I was doing really well for a young kid, in his 20, 21 years old. And then long and short, man, I started a business at 22, and I can tell you more about that if you want, because I don't want to just keep carrying on. But basically, man, School of Hard Knocks, K through 12 educated, and literally just a desire to grind it out. And you look back, now I look back and I have different businesses I've started, different things I'm doing, and all the real estate investing that I've done, and almost surreal. Like you wonder, like, how the hell did that happen? But it did, one step at a time,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the question that comes to mind, because I'm sure you've been asked this before, why was it so important to you to stay near your familiar surroundings, so much so that you were willing to live in a van?
Well, that's a good question. I just think, man, at that age, at 18 years old, just getting out of high school, I wasn't ready to move a world away. And at that time, even though you have a car, I just didn't want to move a world away, and I just didn't feel like doing it. So, I just decided to stay local. I had a girlfriend at the time that lived local there. I don't know, my whole world was there, and I just decided to do it. And, I've always been kind of independent, and it sounded fun.
Well, and here's where I'm going with that. In order for a number of us to experience different things than what we're used to, part of that is a personal transformation. You and I, we all must become someone different in order to enjoy different benefits. So the person who's not willing to leave their familiar surroundings, is completely different than the Nick we're talking to today. And I'm kind of curious, what was the intervening event that made that happen?
You make the greatest point ever. And so let me carry on with that. One of my biggest problems I had early on was being able to adjust and accept change. And that's my personality. I inherently don't like change. And what happened was, at a young age, when I started my first business, and I'll tell you more about that later, I again refused to change, and I wound up losing a business and almost going bankrupt. And I read a book. This wasn't my only thing that made me evolve and change. But I will tell you, I read a book called Who Moved My Cheese? And I'm sure you've read it. If not, get it and read it. I know you have. I could just feel it. And I realized later, one of my biggest downfalls is refusing to change and evolve. And when you're in business for yourself, whether it's you're evolving into the same business and just evolving into a different type of company from where you founded it, you have to be open to that. So one of my biggest Achilles heels was not being open to change, but I learned that lesson. And now I embrace it and I accept it. And as soon as I see a market turning or I see part of my business changing, I immediately embrace change and I head in that direction because I learned my lesson very well in business the first time I started a business, because my nature is not, a lot of our nature isn't to change. We want to hold on to what we have. We may create a business and we feel it's our baby, so we want to hang on too long. And I hung on to a business way too long because I was committed to it and I thought, that was my identity, and it wound up being one of the biggest 7-figure decisions I made, but in the opposite direction.
This is good. This is good because I think there's a number of individuals who could relate to what you're talking about. For example, I mean, you said that you were working at Phil and Jim's and then eventually you got into sales, and sales in and of itself, that's a transition for a number of people because mama said, hey, don't talk to strangers. And now that's kind of how you make your living. You gotta talk to strangers, and that change. So I'm curious, where did this refusal to change come from? Like, why was that where you started? Why do you think that was the case?
I got to be honest with you. I never really know what the core to that was. I think we're all wired a certain way. Who knows? And I don't even want to try to speculate. I mean, maybe, possibly. I lost my father at 10, and that was a tough change. And it was one of the toughest things I had to adjust to. And I don't know. It just my nature was I just didn't want to change. I mean, even when I left that job at Phil and Jim's at 21 years old, I was making this is not a lot of money, but at the time I'm 52. Okay. So do the math. But by the time I was probably making $80,000 a year in retail sales because I was really, really good at it. And we can get into why I think that was. I'll tell you, it was really tough for me to start my own business because I didn't want to walk away from that. But the pull to own my own time and to not have to punch a clock. And I used to watch the guys that were my age now that were on that sales floor having to work holidays and having to work nights and all these things. And I just thought to myself, gosh, and me personally, because I was grinding out, all my friends were going to, Mardi Gras and this and me, and I'm working and doing this and putting on all these hours. And it just was such a strong pull for me. So I was able to overcome it. But back to your question, to get the dog back in the yard, I don't know why. I think my nature, I think some people are just wired different than others. And again, my Achilles heel was that. The real core of that, I don't know why I was wired that way.
Well, and what's the reason I'm highlighting this is because there's a number of individuals who feel like they're possibly trapped. They can't make a change. There's no way on earth I could do something so drastic.
It's fear, Jay.
But yes,
it's fear.
But you were able to deal with it though, because you said you didn't want to let the job go. What pulled you so much that said, you know what, it doesn't matter if I'm afraid anymore?
Yeah, it was because I wanted more. I wanted to control my time. I wanted to build kind of a legacy financially. I wanted to control my own destiny, my financial destiny, my time destiny, and the whole deal. And I think that just had more. And one thing I did find out, and I didn't know at the time, and you don't know this early on, but I have pretty broad shoulders to be able to take on some things. And you learn that as you go. But it's this pull and push where you're fighting your nature, you're fighting your will of what you want to do. And, I learned along the way more than I did at that age, but I learned along the way of how to overcome fear, how to overcome the fear of failure. And I don't know why I'm the one that was able to find that or to push through, but it's the key to success. Listen, bottom line is there are so many people out there that are I think we're all capable of it. We are all capable of success. But again, back to your point, a lot of people just won't pull the trigger. They won't take that chance. They won't do it. At the core of me, I just think that the pull to control my destiny was so strong that I just went kicking and crying to the fear.
So let's talk about that. That moment you go into the fear, that first business. What was day one like?
Yeah, man. Well, I went into the technology business back in the day, and that was back in 1989. I went with two partners, put some money that I had saved, pretty much every dime that I had at the time, into the partnership to start a business. And we were starting to sell memory chips. And, we eventually evolved into full systems integrators selling white boxes in the technology business. But, I remember in Irvine, California, having an office probably as big as the one I'm sitting in. And I don't just mean my whole, because I own a building here, but my office was my whole business. And I had a 2-line phone and a partner sitting right across from me in a desk, and we just had we were just going to be broker and product. And I just remember sitting there thinking, what in the heck did I get myself into? Like it just was this office with a phone, right. And I'm a 22-year-old kid and trying to call businesses, VARs they were called at the time, and value-added resellers, and trying to sell memory chips, buy them at a certain price and sell them a little higher. That was our whole mission. And again, can't tell you how it happened, but it evolved into a full systems integrator, into a 25,000 square foot building boxes, doing services and the whole 9 yards. But man, it's so cliche. One call at a time. One call at a time.
Well, no one likes to hear that part, though. They're like, yeah. Where was the overnight success? Well, it was over many nights.
Unless you create, like, invent something, or you're one of these. It very rarely is an overnight success. That's what I said at the beginning. Bottom line is, people see successful people and they see their success speaks for themselves, and they see all this stuff, and they just figure that person was supposed to be there, or they're from a family of success, or they were given something. Man, you just don't know. Most people don't know the grind and the pain and the fear it takes most of the time to get to where you want to go. But the key is you just keep pushing and fighting, man. And when it comes up, you just step through it. Comes up again, step through it again. It's just simple. It's as simple as that.
Because of what you're saying, I know how I feel when I hear this. So I'm curious to hear how you feel when someone comes to you and say, "Oh man, Nick, you must have got lucky." Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you, though, is where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do to get some of your time back is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/CashFlowDiary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/CashFlowDiary.
I hear that all the time. And I just, like, sometimes it depends on the conversation or who it is. And sometimes I'll just shake my head and go, yeah, it's crazy. I just keep getting lucky. And a lot of times I'll explain, man, there is no luck involved in what happened here. You create opportunities for sure, but the only way you create opportunities is to put yourself out there and do one call at a time, one step at a time, one whatever at a time that you're doing, and you will create opportunities. Then the next thing is you have to make a decision. When the opportunity knocks, you got to open the door. You got to step through it. A lot of times people get opportunity and they think, like, too long, and I tell in my book, no decision is the worst decision you could make. And a lot of times people just won't. If you're an analytical type, which I'm not, and I think and I have a lot of shortcomings, which is I'm not analytical and I need people like that around me and that type of thing. I'm more of an action taker and different things. But man, if you're an analytical type, you got to surround yourself with a good team of people that can help you make decisions, because you can overanalyze. And, there's risk in everything you do, especially being an entrepreneur. And you just got to make it a good calculated risk, and you just got to step through it.
Got it. So take us through this journey. How do we go from memory chips, white boxes, value-added resellers to real estate and the
Sure.
businesses that we're at today? What's that journey look like?
So that journey looks like a 22-year-old kid who got in the right place at the right time and did what he was supposed to do to make a big successful business. But the problem with that young kid is he did not have any life experience. He did not have any experience in an economy. I've never lived through a recession as an entrepreneur. I didn't understand change. I didn't understand things change. So to say all that, to say this, in 2000, we had the dot-com crash. In 2001, we had 9/11 and 2 planes flew into the World Trade Building and it really killed our economy. So I'm at the heart of the dot-com crash. And so as fast as all the businesses were opening and all the IPOs and all the craziness that was going on in the dot-com stuff, as fast as they were opening, they were closing faster. My business went from 40 million in revenue and 100 employees down to under 5, maybe 8 million in revenue within 12 months. Okay. And a handful of employees. I literally lost every single thing that I had, except the house I lived in, which I was going into foreclosure on. And it was the worst 2 or 3 years of my life. I went from a young entrepreneur to a middle-aged, depressed, just washed up, I felt. And it was rough, man. And one of the reasons is because I wouldn't change. I wouldn't evolve. I wouldn't make the cuts too quick enough. I didn't have the experience, and I made every mistake there was to make because of a lack of experience. Now, when that happened and I was going out of business, I had a business partner at the time, and I got a call, and this was in 2004 in summer, okay? And this was another gentleman who I knew who was losing a packaging business, and he had went to a free 2-hour event for a real estate training thing. He called me up and said, "What are you doing on these dates?" And I said, "I don't know." Friday through Sunday. I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, I'm going to a 3-day real estate class and I can bring somebody with me. Would you like to go?" And my answer to him was, his name was Walt. He's still here. And I said, "Walt, I need Friday through Monday to recharge my battery enough to cry my way to work on Monday to be able to deal with the carnage at my office. I was in a bank forbearance agreement. I couldn't make payroll. I hadn't taken a check in 18 months, and I had lost everything." So he told me something crazy. He said, "Okay." He said, "Well, I paid $6,000 for this 3 days." And you know, the first thought I had, Jay, I thought, thank God there's somebody stupider than me on this planet, right? Because that was my hope, right? But it was weird because he put a value on it. And I actually got to talking to you right now. I actually got the chills on my arms because I think to myself, if I didn't go and take that opportunity and go with him, because obviously I did, that I would not be sitting here talking with you on the phone in the position that I'm in. And it actually scares the hell out of me because it was one of the biggest decisions that I ever made. And I said yes. I went to that 3-day class. And by day 2, I called my wife and I said, "I don't know what I have here. I don't know, but I know that something." I saw a glimmer of light, of hope, of something that I could sink my teeth into. And I said, "And I'm going to make a big financial investment that I didn't have because I was going to take a little last bit of equity out of my home that, like I said, because at the time the banks were letting you over leverage your houses and strip the equity out of your house. That's how I survived for almost 2 years because I bought a house and it went up so much. Again, real estate, but I didn't realize it. And I did that. And I got into the real estate business and I learned the business and I started focusing, and we'll get more into this if you would like to, but into the cash flow portion of real estate that really appealed to me because I wanted to build something that someday that I could weather a recession. I could weather a downtime. I could have enough passive mailbox money. Hopefully someday. That was my naive thought in 2004. Broke and buried millions of dollars in debt. And again, what did I do? And this is the short version. If you want to dig into it, you can. I invested one door at a time. That's an industry term for one property at a time. You know that. Yeah. One door at a time, one door at a time, one door at a time. And then I created a massive cash flow business, a turnkey system where eventually I was selling properties to other investors. Again, that's a whole long story. Then I had that business stripped from me. It's a long story. I had a partner and someone else I was working with. And that's how I evolved into, in 2013, 2014 in January, I started this training company. And I evolved into that by kind of eating dirt again. Now, I wasn't financially in a bad spot because I had built my financial stuff up with my properties, but I was in a real tough emotional place by being burned by two partners, and I had that cash flow business stripped from me. And so that's how I evolved into this business. Now, catch this. I'm happier now than I've ever been doing this business, helping other students like me that I was the same student too, and I learned my way. So by some of the worst things that have happened to me, the best things that have happened to me. And again, that's so cliche, right? Like whatever, but I'm telling you, man, like two of the worst things that happened. I lost my technology business. I was never happier as a real estate investor. Didn't love technology. I loved my cash flow business, had it stripped from me, was devastated, emotionally devastated. Guess what? Now I'm in a business of training people how to invest in real estate, happier than I've ever been. So, and all along the way, 7-figure decisions, good and bad, buddy.
No, what I just want to make sure that everybody understands. You and I have never met, right?
Never. It's the first time we've spoken.
Exactly. But yet, why does our story sound the same? I mean, it's just so funny to me, funny/ironic. It's like, these are all the things because, when it comes to the cash flow portion, that's the part that sings to me, obviously, still to this day, no matter what type of business it is. And
yes,
at the end of the day, because we were sick, that was my wife. She was unable to eat or drink. I was unable to walk and talk at the same time without fainting. And we're like, hey, we got a problem. So and being able to build something that does those things is amazing. And having had the same partnership experience is like, wow, you too. Okay, we're buddies, Nick. This is good. Yeah. But here's the thing that I've got to ask. When it comes down to it, there's a lot of people who are trying to just get started. So, I know you've probably gotten this question before, but does it actually take all of that pain, all of that loss? Do I have to go down, Nick, before I can come back to the top?
No, I don't believe so. I don't believe you do. I believe, though, that, my particular journey has built a character in me that I wouldn't trade for any college education or anything ever. Like, would I want to go through it all again and do it? No, sir, I wouldn't. I don't know if I have the energy. I probably would. You never think you do. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. But it has built the foundation and the wisdom that I have, even in business now. It was the school of hard knocks that I literally cherish, that I have, because it made me who I am today. Now, with that said, do I think that every journey has to be that way? No, I don't. I think that there's a lot of journeys out there that aren't taken because they just won't step. They won't step into it. They won't step into the fear. I don't think you have to lose everything to get there. I just think you have everything to gain if you do it, and everything to lose if you don't. And it's just, I see some people that want it badly and they just won't do it. And, the nice thing about real estate investing, and this for sure, even though we haven't spoke, but knowing what I know about real estate and cash flow, here's the thing. With real estate investing, you can still work your job. You can still run your business you're in or whatever you're doing. And whatever you put into real estate, it's going to give you back out. You can put 4 hours a week into it, or 40, and you're going to get back out what you put in. But the beautiful thing about investing, whether you're flipping a property or you're buying and holding, is it's going to give back to you at a rate that you're not used to, because people are used to trading time for money. Yeah. You don't have to trade time for money. People just don't understand that. You know why? Because we're taught in this system that they want to put us in. And again, there's nothing wrong with education. There's nothing wrong with working hard and earning a fair living. When I say what I'm going to say, it's not that I think there's anything wrong with it, but I believe that society has put us into this box and said, you got to work hard and we got to work more hours if you want to make more money. That's nonsense. That is not the truth. And you don't have to go to college to be a success. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go. If you want to become an attorney or a doctor or surgeon, yes, you have to go. You got to go learn your trade and you got to go do your internship. Fine, I get it. That's fine. If that's your passion, I tell people, do what you love. But I will tell you this right now. Most of the entrepreneurs I know are from hard knocks. Not all, but a lot of them. And it's a common denominator with entrepreneurs. It is not your aptitude, it's your attitude that dictates your altitude, and they are just willing to go grind it out. That's what I see.
Well, and you're touching on something that I think is really important. I mean, one, I believe we have a great schooling system, not necessarily an education system, and that system has a number of effects. And so because of that, I have to ask you this question: what value do you put on experiencing failure?
Oh. That's what I basically touched on in a roundabout way a minute ago. I think failure is the best education you can have, and failing does not mean you are a failure. It just means that may be your first try, it might be your second try, but that is the education that I got, that I actually value more than anything else I've got, is the times that I have failed, how I failed, why I failed. What did I do to put myself in the position to fail? But see, everybody, what people don't understand is everyone that you see out there that's a success, not everyone, but I would say the majority, their past is littered with failures. The difference between them and the people who are successful is the ones that are successful pick themselves up, they dust off their boots and their pants, and they keep going. Then they get knocked down again, they stand up, they dust themselves off, and they keep going. I mean, everyone, and I'm just using one person, and this is not a political, it's not a care less, that's not about that. But, people say, look at all the Donald Trump bankruptcy, this, all that, whatever. But what about his success? What about the failures to get to his success? What about other folks that have lost 5 businesses to create the one that has put them into a place that no one else could even fathom? What about all that stuff? So again, failure is your strength. It really is, but you just have to be able to recognize that and not care what people think, not worry about what your peers think, not worry about what being a shot. Because listen, when I lost my technology business and when I got my cash flow business stripped from me, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I'm kind of an alpha male guy, that type of thing. And I didn't know if I couldn't take care of my family. People around me were still doing well. It was hard to accept. Why me? All that crap. But you know what, man? I didn't realize at the time it just was my journey and I was going to something greater. And, but I could have curled up into a ball and died. I could have not went to that real estate class. I could have not started this. If you knew the story behind how I started this business, this training business, and the pressure I was under and the attacks that were coming my way, I'm saying a lot of people wouldn't have done it. But I decided to push through and do it. And now I'm in a place that I can't, I pinch myself. But those were decisions I had to make.
Well, and that's
why I wrote the book.
Well, that's actually what I wanted to center on for a second, because oftentimes when we go to these, what I call move up goals of having something better for us and in our life, for our friends, family, etc., we want the forecast, the sky, the environment to be clear. And rarely, at least in my experience, is the environment clear, is the headwinds, just not present. It seems unclear often, and there's always opposition. So I actually wanted to dig into what did it take to finally create the version of Nick that we're currently seeing, and the version of the businesses that we're currently seeing. What was that environment and climate like during that time?
When I started this business, I mentioned to you that I lost my cash flow business, and I'll make a long story short for you, because again, I don't know how far to go, but you direct me what you want. But I will just tell you,
just go for it.
So I created a turnkey business, and that basically was, I was out there at a time when the foreclosure market was going crazy. After 2009, we know what happened. And, 1 in every 45 properties were in foreclosure in targeted areas, 1 in every 25. I had learned how to go out there to buy in markets. At the time, I started out in Indianapolis, and I moved to Vegas and Orlando. And Vegas and Orlando were hyper markets that now, single family homes that were selling at $300,000, I could buy at auction for $50,000. And so I'm buying these properties at that range. I'm rehabbing them. I'm putting renters in them, and I created management around it with a partner. And so we created management company to protect our own management, to not get taken advantage of by management companies and losing all of our cash flow. And then what I started doing is I got a radio show. It's a long story how I got that. I have no background in communications or radio, but got invited onto a show by some mortgage brokers who lost their mortgage business and wanted to invite real estate investors on to push real estate investments. So I did that. I didn't really, after a few months, didn't really like the direction they were going. So I thought maybe I'll get my own show. I looked into how to do that, and I had paid programming. I did like an infomercial. So long and short of it is, I was taking these, this is a short version, but I was taking these properties that I would buy, rehab, put renters in, and have management, and I would sell them to other investors for cash flow properties that they could hold in their IRAs, or if they had cash, they could do it, or they could put mortgages on them at the time before that changed. But and as an investment, and I would make $5,000 or usually about $10,000 a property, because I could save them way more than that by them having to figure out how to do it and buy one. I'm buying in quantity. Well, I got up to selling 10 or 15, 20 of these a month. Well, then I got contacted by a gentleman who was just starting a real estate training company like the one I have. And I formed a relationship, and I created a 3-day class within that company, teaching people how to buy cash flow properties. And then I would provide them with my properties. So now I'm doing 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 properties a month that I'm selling to investors, making, $10,000, $11,000 a pop on these properties. So, I'm killing it.
Right.
Well, my partner that I'm working with on the ground, who's doing a lot of the groundwork, and myself have a relationship with this gentleman, with 4.5-year relationship, doing hundreds, if not thousands of properties. Well, this particular person running that training company didn't protect his company, didn't run it right, didn't have integrity, and his name became absolute mud in the industry. I say that to say that he started losing money in his training business, but the only thing that stood out that was profitable was selling the properties. Long story short, believe me, long story short, he approached my partner and him circumvented me. He took my portion of the business from me. They went direct with each other, and I got cut out of the business. Now, let me tell you something. That is the absolute abridged version. These were two relationships that were one of my closest friends.
Right.
4.5 years. I created this business. I didn't have it set up right. I didn't have the corporate structure right. And I put myself in harm's way by being too trusting. And I put myself in that position, and it got stripped from me. I was literally one day in and the next day out. Now, was I okay financially? Yes. I had tons of properties, all that. So I wasn't hurting that way, but I was hurting emotionally. And I didn't know what to do now to continue in the business, because that relationship I built with my partner, we were moving millions of dollars of product. We had rehab teams, we had management, and now to create that, it took years at that level. So now what do I do? Do I go start over? Do I try to build another partnership? How do I do that? I could, but my heart wasn't in it. And within a couple of months, I realized, and this is like a couple of weeks, I had to rip myself out of bed because I was so depressed over the betrayal of this and the rejection of it. But I decided, and it hit me, that what I missed the most was working with the students and teaching and watching people see that light like I saw in 2004. So I had this grand idea to start my own training company. Well, again, very long story short, from about August of 2013 to January of 2014, I worked morning, noon, and night trying to put this thing together. And I didn't know how to start a training company other than just that I've been around that business. And I launched in 2014. Well, get this. In about the end of 2014, I got served a lawsuit by the gentleman who circumvented me because he felt I was competing with him. Okay. So you took my business.
I love this.
You took my business.
This is so real. It's great. This is the stuff that no one ever talks about, that everyone thinks, oh, we just had it. I'm like, no, this is the stuff.
Yeah.
This is where it is.
I got a full shanking right in my back, took my business, and now I'm served. So now I'm served, and I got served twice. This individual tried to show up at every single one of my events for almost 2 years during this fight, to serve people in my company, to try to keep people from coming to my company, from people basically doing everything he could to make this not work. And his big mistake was he was focused more on me than his business. And what he didn't realize was, and let me tell you something, this individual had deep pockets and a mean streak that where, we had death threats to my family. There was a lot of things that happened because we bounced a couple servers out of our events, and it got nasty. It was a fight of my life, but I will just tell you this, and this is how the name of the book got created. We were 3 months into this, and I had not yet countersued him, because what he didn't realize is he took my business from me, and I had an actual lawsuit against him. His was completely bunk. He told me he didn't care if he had one. He just was going to try to outspend me. That basic. So this is what happened. So my mother, my first main event bus tour in March, I launched in January. He'd already served me. We're in this legal battle. I hadn't sued him back. My mother passes away right at the time of my very first bus tour. Okay, so he gets word of this. He contacts me through Messenger on Facebook and says, "Gosh, I do really feel bad. Condolences." Like, yeah, right. Like, you took my business, you're suing me, and you're giving me condolences, but fine. And he says, "We were really close friends, best of friends, actually. We should talk. This doesn't need to go any further." I thought, wow, that's weird. Okay, so we get on the phone. I get in my truck. I told no one around, and a couple minutes of condolences, and he says, "Okay, Nick, here's how it's going to be." He says, "I have two options for you, and I want you to hear them out." And I said, "Okay." He said, "The first option is, we're like Microsoft, Apple, that type of thing. They fought, but then they learned how to work together. You take whoever you have right now in your business, and don't hire anyone else in this industry. And if there is anyone in this industry, and especially if they've ever worked for me, whatever, you and I communicate about it." And I said, "So what you're asking is, you're saying that I need your approval to either hire someone or this is the first time I realized he was afraid of me, okay, in this industry." And then, and I said, and he goes, "Don't answer, because I know how you are, and whatever." And I go, "Okay, well, I'm not crazy about the first one. What's your second option?" Because he said, if we do one of these, he'll drop the lawsuit. And I said, "Okay." So I said, "Yeah, I'm not crazy about the first one. What's the second one?" He goes, "Well, you're going to hate the second one." And I said, "Well, what's the second one?" He said, "Well, you're going to go out of business, or else I'm going to financially dismantle you." And I said, "So let me get this straight. I either ask your permission, number one, on things that I do in my business, or number two, just go into a different business and go out of business." And he said, "Before you answer me," he said, "I just want you to realize one thing, Nick, and I want you to think about it hard. Your answer right now, you're making a 7-figure decision." That's why I wrote my book. And what he was doing was threatening me. He was threatening me. He was basically saying, if you don't take my deal, I am going to financially dismantle you and make you spend 7 figures in this lawsuit. And I said, "Listen, I'm never going to ask your permission, okay? And I'm not going anywhere." And he said, "Then I'm going to financially dismantle you." And I said, "Then I'll see you in the end zone." We never spoke again. We had a 2.5-year legal battle. I did spend 7 figures. He was right. But here's what he didn't realize. He didn't realize that he put himself in a legal position that he did. He got countersued for $10 million. His legal attorneys asked me 3 times to walk away during mediations, to get out of this thing, because he was going to lose. And 3 months, they never want you to go to trial. 3 months before trial, spending a ton of money, the whole 9 yards, just like we mentioned. And his attorneys called my attorneys. And it was 3 months before we were going to trial. These things never go to trial. They always settle.
Right.
And his attorney said, "We want out of this. My client wants to know, what is it going to take?" Okay. And so my attorneys called me, and I said, "You say these words. If you don't, it's all hell's going to break loose." And I told them, I said, you tell him, if your client wants out of this, then he's going to have to make a 7-figure decision. And so it got put back on him, and we settled. And that got behind me. My company has been flourishing. His is gone. He's out of business now, years later. And we're just doing great things here. We're the first, listen, I don't know if you know this, Jay, but the real estate seminar business has a huge black eye on it. These gurus and the things that go on in this. Yeah. Let me tell you something. If you're thinking that, you're right. Okay. So if that's the elephant in the room, listen, these companies have a huge black eye on them. They come in, they mow and blow through students. They take advantage of them. They get someone from a TV flip show. They put them on a banner. They run it into the ground for 2 years, and they get a bad name online, and then they rebrand somebody else. I'm a student of this. I got screwed in my training. Believe it or not, I didn't have the best real estate training, but the difference between me and the other thousands of people that went through that training company in 2004 is I decided that I was still in something great, and I figured it out. I made my mistakes. I took my lumps. I didn't whine and cry about being taken advantage of and not having the support, not having the service that they promised me and all that. And I figured out and I made it. And I don't begrudge that journey at all. That's the difference. So many people today, they want to blame everything else. But really, man, you hold the cards to your destiny. You hold them. Nobody else, whether you're successful or not, that is you. It is not your parents. It is not your background. It is not where you went to school. It is not where you grew up. It's not what color you are. That's nonsense. What it is just you get to decide if you become great or not. And I believe that in my heart. That's what's in the book. And I'm not promoting my book. I don't make money on it. Just so you know, it's not a moneymaker for me. To me, it was just completely personal.
Totally understood. But at the same time, here's what I know. I know that there's a number of people who have listened this far and they're like, man, I like what I am hearing. In fact, they probably want to find out more about what you got going on. But so for the few people that actually want to get a copy of the book or find out what you guys are up to online these days, what's going to be the best way for them to find you?
Okay, so for the book, you just go to Amazon and you type in 7-Figure Decisions. Now, the subtitle, you want to hear the subtitle?
I'm afraid to hear the subtitle. Go for it.
You should be. 7-Figure Decisions, Having the Balls to Succeed.
Absolutely. So, but it's still for women can get this too then.
Well, yeah, they sure can, because it's really not. It's just figurative. It's just having the guts to succeed.
Yes, I know.
Even my publishers who wrote the book and everything are like, hey, there might be a couple of people turned off from that. I said, listen, I'm not here selling books. It's not my revenue. I'm financially free. I'm writing this book for me. That's my subtitle, because that's what it took to succeed. And so you got to look past that. And if anyone's like, oh my gosh, look past that, because what's in the book is pretty valuable. So if you go to Amazon, 7-Figure Decisions, Having the Balls to Succeed, it's on Kindle, or you can get the paperback. Again, only if you feel, if your listeners feel they want it, because it's not a revenue stream for me at all. It was just personal for me. As far as the real estate stuff, you can go to nvrealestateacademy.com. You can go to that website, realestateacademy.com. There's some numbers on there. If folks want to know when's the next events, they can get the information and contact us. And again, Jay, I gave you that because obviously you asked for it. I'm not even here to promote it. What I mean by that is, thank you for asking me. And if people do want that information, I want them to have it. But, for me, I'm just here because I want people to hear. If one, it sounds so corny, but if one or two people can hear what we're talking about and decide to lay it down and lay it out and to step through it, it's worth it to me, man, because it's a great feeling to succeed.
Yes. And I'm so glad that someone else said that, because I feel that it's like, how many times can you really say, look, I'm only here to make a difference for the one person who's going to actually follow through or listen. And if more than one of you, then that's even better. But I definitely, I've got a final question for you, because I'm curious to hear your answer.
Okay.
Let's pretend for a moment that someone's been listening this entire time and they haven't quite yet put we'll call it their superhero outfit on. They're standing in front of what I like to call the superhero outfit store. They're ready to pick out their cape. They're ready. I'm going to do this. I just listened to Nick. I'm excited. If he went through that, I can do it too. Now, like I know, when we get to those points of decisions, there's often a companion that is with us, and it comes in the form of a voice. And that voice often says things like, oh my God, are you sure? Are you serious? You're really going to go into business for yourself? No way. And do you remember what happened last time you tried something like that? And for some people, they're actually related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. This time, Nick, they're going to do it. They're going to follow through. They're going to make it happen. And they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Well, I can just say it this way. And it's the only way I can answer it. I can't give you an action plan in the next 48 hours. I can just tell you this. There's something that I write about in my book that I learned that was a game changer for me. It's called pattern interruption. Okay. And what that means is this. It's like this, man. We all have that voice of fear, that voice of failure, the voice of negativity that, people want the dream snatchers in your life that are chirping at your ear, whatever it is. First thing I would say, if that voice is real and it comes from a human body, You can't get rid of your family and you can't get a divorce over it. So don't misunderstand me. But what you can do is if you go to the in-laws house and they tell you, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, that's too much risk, whatever, my daughter, you're not going to be able to, whatever. You get up and you don't even have to let them know why you're doing it, and you go for a walk. You get away from them. You do not have to sit in that environment or listen to that. If it is your wife or your husband, that's a little bit trickier, but you are going to have to figure out how to block that out, how to walk away from it, and how to continue to go to your destiny. And the pattern interruption part is this: when that little voice in you says, you can't do this, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to ask your permission to something. Yeah. I never, even in my events, everything, I'm not an Anthony Robbins. I don't use foul language. In this podcast, can I say one word and it's not real bad, but do I have permission? Okay. So when I was going through this, and I learned pattern interruption from a mentor, and what he told me was this, and you got 2 minutes for this?
Yeah.
That I could say, okay. What he told me was this. I demanded one-on-one mentorship from somebody that was in my training when I was going through these boot camps, and this person was the cash flow instructor. He had told me no 2 or 3 times. I wound up paying him money I didn't have to spend 3 days with him. And when we sat down on the first day, he said to me, "Can I be candid with you?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "I'm going to really be raw with you." I said, "Please." He said, "Nick, from the day I met you, you've worn your identity on your sleeve, that you're broke and that you're lost your business, you're losing it, you can't take your family, you're losing your house." And he goes, "And I get it, and those things are real, but that is your identity. That has taken over your whole body." He goes, "Let me ask you a couple of questions. Do you have any health are you dying?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you have this?" "Yes." "Do you have a family?" "Yes." "Have a wife, kids? Do they love you?" "Yes." He went through this whole line of the things, the blessings in my life. And I kind of knew where he was going, but then he looked at me and he goes, "Then shame on you, man." He goes, "Look, there's people that are in their deathbed right now that have a week to live that would trade with you to have what you have, the opportunity to go get great again and to go get back what you have." He goes, but let's say you don't. Whatever. He goes, "Then live in an apartment, love your wife, do the things that the blessings that you have." He goes, "Those are the things you need to focus on." He goes, "Shame on you, man." He goes, "I get it. It's real, but whatever." And then he taught me pattern interruption. And this is the point I was getting to. And he said, "Nick, I know that fear it's disabling you." Like, because for me, I had fear hitting me every minute. Like, what if I lose my house? What if this? What if I can't provide? And he said, you got to take that and you got to replace it. So every time you have that voice in your head that says, "No way you can do that. What happened last time?" You got to say, "No, last time was my first experience," and you got to replace it with something. So here's what I replaced one thing with. When my partner was telling me, or that other individual was telling me, "You will never make this. I will dismantle you." When I started this training company, because believe me, there was a lot on the line, even from my self-worth. Like, I thought to myself, what if I try to start this company and it doesn't work? It's going to make their point that I didn't have any value, that I couldn't do it, that I did need them. And I was afraid to fail. But every single time when I had that feeling, I pattern interrupt this. And I said to myself, bullshit. I am the best in this business. Now, listen, I didn't even have the name of this company yet. And I'm driving around in my car, and every time that fear would hit me, I would say to myself, bullshit, I am the best in this business. And I convinced myself that I was going to be the best in this business, that I was going to be the best in this training industry one way or another, no matter how I had to get there. And I convinced myself of it by taking a negative pattern, a negative thought, and repatterning it into a positive something that was going to get me there. And I say this to my students: see it, believe it, map it, execute it. So here's what I mean by that. The first step is to go anywhere. You have to see where you're going. You have to visualize that. I don't know what that is for that individual listening, but whatever that is, you have to it has to be your vision of what you want to do and create or do. Then you have to believe it. And even if you have to fake it till you make it, that's where the pattern interruption. Listen, if everyone around you believes it, if I believe it, if you believe it, but if that person doesn't believe they can do it, they're done. So you have to find a way to surround yourself with the right people, the right thought processes, and the right pattern interruption to get yourself to believe what you just saw. Then thirdly, you have to map it, which means you have to have a viable plan. You can't just see something and believe it and go think you can do anything. It has to be something you're capable of doing. What I mean by that is, if I wanted to be an NBA basketball player, I don't care how hard I tried, how much I practiced, and how much I pattern interrupted. I'm not dunking on anyone anytime soon. So it has to be real, right? So then you have to map it and have a real plan of action and a system. Then lastly, you have to execute. So cliche, take action. But if you don't do the last one, the first three is just a good plan and a good dream and a good vision. You have to take action and execute it and step through it. See it, believe it, map it, execute it. And I will say this, and I know I've never listened to one. Don't take offense to this. So I know you believe in this. Your mind is your strongest muscle, and it is your biggest asset. If you can control your mind and your thoughts, everything you think and do today will become your tomorrow by default. You have no choice, positive or negative.
Love it. That's I knew you would have a great answer, and I knew it would jive and be perfect for what everyone needed to hear. Let me just say that I appreciate everything that you have gone through, grown through, continue to do. And I appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge, wisdom, and insight here with us today at the CashFlow Diary.
It was my pleasure, man. It was good to meet you, and I'm happy to do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means you're about to make a 7-figure decision. You're going to go grab the book. Why? Because you know there's more lessons to be learned. You're going to follow through. You're going to take that action, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is what you are doing, because you just heard it. If you want to make it happen, see it, believe it, map it, execute it. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, dunking a basketball is absolutely fun. You should try it. Nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.